everybody, Noreen here. We are in the middle of our summer scrapbook series, and this week we are looking at mixed media and memorabilia. We spent a little bit of time on the Facebook page talking about how we can add memorabilia, and I thought it would be fun to just do a really quick video showing you some basic, easy ways to use mixed media on your scrapbook pages and other paper crafting projects. And mixed media is really just kind of a catch-all term for anything that isn't just, your paper, your photos, and a little bit of embellishments. It's things like paints, inks, gelato crayons, modeling pastes, all these kinds of things that you hear and see, demonstrated on videos. So I want to give you 3 simple ways to add mixed media to your pages and projects, all of which are going to be simple to use and aren't going to cost you a fortune. First one we're going to start with is watercolors. Now, my background is in fine art, and I was an art teacher for many years, so I do have some of the more art quality watercolors. You'll probably seen them in the little tubes like this, and of course the watercolor brushes can be quite expensive. I decided that I would just pop over to Michael's and I would get a package of their watercolors. So this is a great, it's I think Artist's Loft brand. Lots of beautiful colors here, and I think the quality of the watercolors is okay. It's better than kids watercolors, but not as good as artist quality. And now I can't get it open. The brush probably is not a good quality. What I would recommend is that you pick up a kind of a small flat brush that's designed for watercolor. It won't set you back too much. This is a 1/2 inch, and the watercolor brushes are made with natural hairs. I think this is a squirrel brush. Okay. Alternatively, this is from Close to My Heart. This is a water pen, which is quite nice. You just add water into the barrel, and then you can use the water comes right out at the top of the brush there. So the only other things you're going to need is a little bit of tape. I have a nice it's a sticky back mat that most materials, most paints and things like that will just wipe off of. But you can definitely use, your cutting mat, any kind of place mat, anything that would be wipeable. Don't do it on your table surface if you don't want it to stain, that kind of thing. A little bit of water, a spray bottle of water for this technique that we're going to use. This is just a little spray bottle that I got at the dollar store, kind of in the travel section. Some tissues, of course, and I like to just have some all-purpose wipes, baby wipes, that kind of thing. What I want to show you in terms of how to use watercolor is how to make just a really easy, pretty background, okay? And then I'm going to give you a kind of a bonus tip. I was wanting to use these photos that I took of the flower gardens at the Empress Hotel in Victoria. And so definitely there's these beautiful kind of pinks and mauvey purples. So I want to mimic those colors on the background of my paper. I'm using Creative Memories white cardstock. Now, it's not a watercolor paper, but because we're not doing a lot of detail, we're not adding a ton of water on this, it will be just fine. I've just taped it down a little bit. Now, if I was working on an artwork, I would tape all the way around to have a nice frame, because I'd be adding layers and layers of water. I would want to make sure that it doesn't buckle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just really going to start kind of playing. I want to kind of create kind of a border. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of put watercolor in the 4 corners very loosely, and then just create kind of a wash or a puddle effect in the middle. All right, so just dip your brush in water. Start with, if you want to start with the, a nice easy color first. I'm going to actually go into some of these darker purples, and I'm just going to kind of create my corners. Need lots more water than that. And a little bit more of kind of the purpley color. See how I'm just kind of creating a border along the edges? Get some nice pinks here. Just really, really loosely, and I'm going back to reload my brush with a little bit of water each time. Okay, now I've got kind of those corners. I'm just going to add a bunch of color into the center, and I'm really just moving it around, reloading, letting the color puddle on the pages, letting it run and mix. And I'm just focusing on those colors that I kind of talked about there. I've got kind of the dark pinks, mauvey purples, pale pink, and then kind of going into that hydrangea blue, which I'm going to get a little bit more in here. Okay, and again, just dipping. When you have a little drop like that, you do want to get it pretty quick, otherwise it will sort of dry. Okay, and I just want to do something like that, just covering a good chunk of my paper. And then this is the fun part. I'm just going to spritz my water onto it. You can see how it really helps the color just mold and go together. Run, I guess, and go together. It doesn't really sound right, molding. And then just take a tissue or two, and then you're just going to kind of tap into various areas to pick up the extra water. And it'll create a really pretty sort of soft mottled background, marbly sort of looking. But really what we did is we created the outside edges with the watercolor, so that kind of creates a border or a boundary, so the watercolor isn't going to go over those edges. All right, and now we've got all of the watercolor paint in the middle. When that dries, and it is going to take a little while to dry, it might be a little buckly, as you can see. So just put, weight it down with some heavy books or something. And then it's going to be a beautiful kind of soft background for these photos. My bonus tip for you is that I use those same colors along with some blues and greens on a kind of a half sheet of watercolor paper. And I did this one a little bit earlier, and I've let it dry, so you can see it's not perfectly flat. But what I'm going to do with it now is I'm going to actually use one of our punches, and I'm going to punch some of these shapes out from it. And so you can see that these are going to be beautiful, embellishments to add right on top, and it's going to coordinate. And I'm also going to cut some of the leaves with our leaf punch out of the green. And put that over there. So I'm going to have pretty watercolor leaves to work with my embellishments. The second mixed media technique I want to share with you, a couple of new ideas hopefully, is using pens and markers. And I'm really thrilled that Creative Memories has just released a set of new colored dual tip markers. So of course we love our brown and black, those are great for journaling, but now it's time to have a little bit of fun with our 5 new colors. And of course they come in this cute little nylon pouch in the Creative Memories colors. So let's play with these a little bit. I'm going to use the blue and green because I'm going to scrap some photos of my son playing soccer, and you can see it's mostly blues and greens there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a stencil that I make with a punch. So this is the hexagon place and punch, and you can see that I've just punched 2 of the hexagons from this little card, fairly heavy cardstock, and I'm going to use this as my stencil. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to trace the hexagon shape using the colored markers onto our background. When you're doing a background, you can do it in any number of ways. You can do it, all over, really randomly. You can kind of cluster it in the center or cluster it into one corner wherever you want a bit of a focal point. You can do it in diagonal corners, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of focus it on this corner and this corner, or you could really do it in, a grid pattern. So it's really up to you. I've done 2 simply because I've got 2 colors and I don't want the colors to kind of, mix. So let's start with the blue, and I'm going to use the bold tip just to get a little bit more of a bold line here, and literally just starting to trace. You could color some of these in if you like. Change directions with your stencil. Just go over these, as many or as few as you want. It's nice when they kind of overlap and appear kind of random and clustered. Okay, you can see that there's a little bit of smudging, so you do want to be careful with that. And let me do the green now, just for a little bit of variety. Oh, I like that green a lot. So you may want to just kind of wait in between a little bit so that you're not smudging or move to another area so that you're not smudging. Do one right off the corner here. Okay, so you get the idea. Very simple. And you just go through and do as many or as few as you like. So I'm going to finish, you know, this corner, maybe layer it up a little bit more, and then I'll add some in this corner. But I also thought what would be kind of fun is to use the punch again as a bit of a different kind of stencil. This is the brand new Go Fight Win paper pack, and again kind of a sports theme. And because I was doing these soccer photos, look at the grass pattern. I thought that was perfect. So I'm definitely going to be using some of this paper kind of in behind the photos. Okay, so that coupled with the hexagons is going to be cute. But I also thought for a little bit of extra detail on my embellishment, I thought maybe I would trace inside the punch before I actually punch it out. And I don't think I'm going to use a color on that. I think I'm just going to use my black, and I think I'm going to use my fine tip. And what I'm going to do is, now that I have the paper inside the punch, I'm just going to go around the inside edge of the punch, okay, and actually punch it out. And it just gives that punched shape just a little bit extra, you know, detail. So I'm going to make some of those, and those are going to be some of my embellishments. The third technique I want to share with you today is using inks. And in this case, I'm using Distress Spray Stain inks by Ranger. I've got Abandoned Coral and Mermaid Lagoon, and I think they're going to work really well for these photos of my boys in the backyard pool. So I've chosen those. Again, they're not expensive. They're pretty affordable in terms of, you know, trying something new and playing with something new. Now, like the markers, we're going to just kind of create a background here. And again, when you spray these, you can spray them in little bursts. You can, you know, try to kind of get an even coverage. But I'm actually going to, again, kind of concentrate on the upper and the lower part. And again, I like a diagonal just because, again, it takes your eye through the layout. Now, you can spray them, but what I like to do actually is unscrew the cap, okay, and then I just like to tap it onto my paper. I find I have a little bit more control. Sometimes the spray gets a little crazy. Think about your spray painting, right? When you're spray painting something and, you know, you want to keep it controlled in an area, but you find overspray, you know, in places you never knew it was even going. All right, so there's the Abandoned Coral, and I'm going to do the same with the Mermaid Lagoon. And again, the inks are fairly concentrated, so you don't need a lot. And again, if you spray, sometimes you get a little bit more coverage than you might want. This is a nice, easy technique to just give you a little bit of background coverage. Okay, so I think that's good. I'm kind of planning on choosing a couple of these photos, you know, putting them in the center along with some accent paper. I want to use the Doily Border Maker cartridge. I guess it's not a cartridge, this is a Border Maker punch. It's a standalone punch. And I cut out, I think it was 2 full strips of the doily, cut them up, and I've just laid them across a card using the repositional adhesive. And I've really pushed it down good. And I'm going to use it as a mask, and I'm going to spray the background. Now again, with a stencil, you're pushing things through, okay, or you're emphasizing the negative space. With a mask, you're covering up parts, and everywhere where there's the doily, that will show through as white. So I'm going to use the abandoned coral, and this time I'm going to spray it. Now, you might want to have a piece of cardboard that you can kind of keep off to the side so that you don't get any overspray. Okay, again, you don't want this going on your table. But I'm just going to go ahead and kind of lightly spray it. Once it dries, I'm going to pull up the borders, and everywhere the borders are now, there's going to be white behind it. So that's going to make kind of a nice pretty background with not a lot of work. So hopefully you've got a few new ideas, and I hope you give one or two of these a try. Make sure you're going to share those on our Facebook page, facebook.com/organizedandcreativemom, and use the hashtag OCMMixed, and that way we'll be able to find your projects really, really easily. Okay, have a great day. Have lots of fun playing with these new materials, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Thanks very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.